Wednesday afternoon to 4 o'clock, time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your afternoon is going well. Today, the first day of this set of OTAs that was open to the media out in Berea. Kevin Stefanski met with the media, talked about the order in which the quarterbacks are going through drills during this quarterback competition.
We're doing that every day. We're mixing it up every single day. So that's why I tell you not to read much into it, even though you guys don't listen to me. But we're just trying to get guys exposure to different concepts, those type of things. So it varies by walkthrough. It can vary by drill. It's not something that we're really we're not leaning into or worried about the order at this moment.
So one of those quarterbacks that's involved in the competition, Kenny Pickett, he talked about what he's working on and how comfortable he feels in the Browns system.
I feel like I'm pretty hard on myself to be, as best as I can be. So I try to always not worry about the outside opinion and just, hold myself to a really high standard of how I want to play quarterback and how I want to play football. So I don't think my mindset will change. Excited to have this opportunity. Really grateful to be here. It's been a lot of fun so far. I think continuing to work in the pocket's been, really good for me. Having a chance in Philly to do it, working with the coaches here, continuing to get better there. Felt like late in games, I found ways to win games, which was always good to see. But continue just to grow as a quarterback in the system. You have to be in a system for a couple years to really grow. I'm hoping I can have that here, where you just build a foundation with something and grow with it. So I'm just taking it a day at a time.
So the other veteran, if you will, in the quarterback competition, Joe Flacco, he talked about being the veteran with much younger quarterbacks he's competing with.
I think it's a lot of fun. I mean, I actually, just from experience, I think they tend to get a little bit of a kick out of me just because I am 40 years old now and could be their fathers probably. And it's fun for me, too, in the same kind of way. I mean, they're young and they have a lot of life and a lot of energy and a lot of, new things that kind of can keep me in the loop with my kids and all those things. It's fun. I mean, everybody in that locker room, it's like we're all 25-year-olds just having the time of our lives. And look, we get to come out here and do this for a living, so why wouldn't we feel that way?
Flacco was also asked about being back with the Browns. Many of the fans wanted him back after that 5-game run into the playoffs a couple years ago.
It's a cool place. I mean, the last time I was here, you picked up on it. I mean, it's a city that loves football and is hungry for some winning. And I think that's what resonated is we won games. And listen, it feels good, but listen, you got to go out there and you got to perform and you got to play well and you got to win football games. That's what it's all about. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm working hard to put us in the best position, put myself in the best position to be out there winning football games. So it's a lot of similar concepts and things like that. There may be some new names and new ways we're kind of teaching things, but ultimately a lot of the core stuff is pretty similar. So good amount, yeah.
So Steelers Hall of Fame quarterback and Fox analyst Terry Bradshaw talking about Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers waiting on him. This from 103.7 The Buzz Morning Mayhem.
That's a joke. He shouldn't. That is just, to me, is a joke. What are you going to bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me? I mean,
that's not the Steelers' way, right?
No, man. That guy needs to stay in California and go, somewhere and chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there.
100%. These guys on the show, Mr. Bradshaw, know I'm not a fan of his. We've been around each other personally, and he was not a kind person.
He does not. I had to go over and introduce myself to him. He's not. I had to go, hey, Aaron, I'm Terry Bradshaw. I know he knows me, but I just felt like I better tell him who I am. Yeah. And not, walk in there and you get in his presence and you feel like it's going to start snowing.
We'll hear Terry Bradshaw's thoughts on Kenny Pickett a little bit later in the show. Plenty of Browns coming up. All right, Guardians trying to avoid the sweep at the hands of the Dodgers over at Progressive Field. Clayton Kershaw going against Colby Allard on the mound for the Guardians. First inning, Jose Ramirez, an RBI single. Ramirez out trying to stretch it into a double, but the Guardians did take a 1-0 lead. In the fourth, Will Smith doubles just out of the outstretched arms of Martinez. That tied the game at 1. Still in the fourth inning, And Andy Pages, a single to right. That'll bring Will Smith in 2-1. Dodgers had the lead. Still 2-1, sixth inning. Dodgers at it again. Freddie Freeman, an RBI single. He will reach second on the plate. 3-1 Dodgers. You see him slide in there safe. Seventh inning, still 3-1 Dodgers. Enrique Freeman scores on Tim Herron's wild pitch, made it 4-1. But Guardians come back. Eighth inning, 4-2. Nolan Jones, bases loaded, goes the other way, hits it out into left field. That one will tie the game up at 4. 2-run score. After a pitching change, Angel Martinez unties it with one swing. 3-run homer in the bottom of the 8th made it 7-4. Clase closes it out with a 1-2-3 ninth. The Guardians do, in fact, avoid the sweep, 7-4. Only bad news, Stephen Kwan left the game with right wrist inflammation. So we don't know the status of Stephen Kwan. Guardians have a day off. Then it will be a 3-game series with the Anaheim Angels, Los Angeles Angels, whatever you want to call them, Luis Ortiz, Jose Soriano, the starting pitching matchup Friday after the day off. ESPN's national NBA analyst Brian Windhorst was asked if he thinks the Cavs will make a significant move in the offseason.
If I was Kobe Altman, what I would do. I got to sit back and watch, because the league may look a lot different by June 28th. And the reason I'm picking that date is I think the draft is June 25th. I suspect we're going to see more action in terms of balance of power in the league around the draft than we are in the first week of July, because I just don't think there's going to be a lot of action in free agency. I think the Cavs will be very, very interested bystanders in and around the draft. Maybe not so much for them, but for because look, that's how they got Jared Allen, guys. Jared Allen all of a sudden is involved in the James Harden situation, and the Rockets don't want him. Boom, Cavs jump on that. So I don't think they're making aggressive outgoing calls right now, but their phones will be on.
It'll be interesting to see. Again, Cavs don't have a lot of flexibility financially. Any money that goes out would have to come back in relative to the player transactions. We'll find out if anything is in the offing for the Cavs. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Tim Bielik up first to talk Browns. We'll hear Terry Bradshaw's thoughts on Kenny Pickett. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. Browns are first up here today on Sports4CLE. OTAs underway out in Berea. Hall of Fame quarterback for the Steelers, Terry Bradshaw, also an analyst on Fox studio crew, talking about Kenny Pickett and what he learned about him.
I liked Kenny Pickett. I liked him at Pitt. I know him. I know what he's like. And when they got him to Pittsburgh, here's what they didn't do. They didn't protect him. They didn't.
Was he a first rounder?
He was.
Okay.
Picked like 28th.
Yeah.
They didn't get him on offensive line. They wanted to run the football, but they didn't have an offensive line that could protect, and they didn't have weapons. He had no wide receivers to speak of.
Right.
And Then you throw a kid in there for 2 years, and you got an offense that doesn't fit and doesn't work, and they can't run because their offensive line is not even good enough for a run-blocking team. And therefore, they say Pickett was a failure. He wasn't a failure. The Steelers were a failure. Now Pickett goes to Philadelphia as a backup. He gets a Super Bowl ring. He's traded to Cleveland, who now has 4 quarterbacks. Right. And Pittsburgh really has 1, I guess. Yeah. But you can find these kids, and you can get them out of college. And if they're good in college, there is no reason that they should fail in the NFL if you look at what they did in college and why they were successful. All those kids from Alabama, that's great players, great offensive line, receivers, running back. Of course, those quarterbacks, if they're successful, now they take that into the NFL. They would do the same things in the NFL if they had the proper talent around them. Right. And there's very few teams in the NFL that provide the offensive line and the wide receivers and the talent around a quarterback. And when you do that, you're going to be successful.
So looking at Tim Bielik from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, it's interesting. It's a guy that obviously knows the Steelers well, and it was just interesting to hear Terry Bradshaw's opinion of Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, and there's certainly plenty of things to like about Kenny Pickett. I think in particular, remembering his time with the Steelers, that he's made some big fourth quarter, touchdown plays. I believe he was talking a little bit about that in one of the clips you played at the beginning of the show, talking about being able to make plays in the fourth quarter. But what I think, looking at, the Steelers in 2023, Pickett's second season as a starter, they had George Pickens as a receiver, and he had a great season, but, he just got traded. Deontay Johnson, is okay. Like he's been a solid receiver, but he's been on a decline the last couple of years. Pat Freiermuth, good tight end, not exactly one I would call great. And there's a reason when you look at the Steelers that Omar Khan, the GM, has really targeted the offensive line the last couple of years because it just hasn't been that good. And also a reason why the Steelers moved on from Najee Harris, that the guys they got to be skill players around Kenny Pickett by and large hadn't worked, and the scheme really wasn't so great either. So you look at the Steelers, especially the last couple of seasons, I know they caught some fire with Russell Wilson in the middle of last season, but then they kind of melted down because the offense wasn't that productive and the defense kind of collapsed. And I think that's just why I've said before, of the other 3 teams in the division, the Steelers have the lowest ceiling because they just haven't had those kind of weapons. They don't have the skill players that the Bengals do or the offensive line that the Ravens do. They just haven't had that. And it's hard to judge a young quarterback when you don't have those things around him. Now, that said, we don't know, how much better, the Browns skill players are. I think David Njoku certainly upgraded on Pat Freiermuth. Jeudy's certainly proved last year he's a really good number 1 receiver. The running backs are a question mark till they get out there and play because they're both, as Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson are both rookies. Offensive line getting older. So it's going to be interesting to see how he fits into Kevin Stefanski's scheme in particular, because what we've seen with Stefanski's scheme, he can get the best out of what he's got in front of him. I mean, they beat the 49ers 2 years ago with P.J. Walker as their starting quarterback.
Yeah, and so Kenny Pickett talked about fitting into this Browns offensive system and what he learned in his year with the Eagles where they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think there's more similarities to Philly's system than people may realize, just because we're a little bit more under center than the gun. Philly was more, in the gun, but a lot of the concepts are the same and the teaching is the same. Just learning the new terminology has really been the big thing for me. Yeah, I'm extremely grateful for my time in Philly. I think I just, was shown how it's supposed to be done, really from the top down. So when you get a chance to see what it's supposed to look like and how it should look on a day-to-day basis, not just on Sundays, I think it'll pay dividends for me, in the future.
And the interesting thing, he's 15-10 as a starter. He hasn't put up big offensive numbers, in part because that's not the style of offense Pittsburgh has played.
Yeah, I mean, again, even looking at some of the numbers, from 2023 when Pickett was the quarterback most of the season, they were 29th in the NFL in passing attempts and 9th in rushes. So they didn't really air it out. Now, that was, of course, the season where Pickett and, where the Steelers had to go through 3 different quarterbacks. They still made the playoffs, but Pickett started the vast majority of those games. He started 12 of 17. So that was certainly a situation where the Steelers, I've talked about the formula before, keep game close, don't turn the ball over, and hit those big splash plays in high leverage situations. That's been the formula, and that certainly has worked for Pittsburgh, being able to make the playoffs the last couple seasons, given the fact that they're obviously not the most talented team. But going to Philadelphia, then all of a sudden you're going to a team with an excess of riches on offense. You have arguably the best offensive line of football. You have two receivers in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, who would be number one guys in most other organizations. You obviously have Saquon Barkley, who had an unbelievable season a year ago. Like I said, just an excess of riches on offense. And by and large, the last decade, they've been one of the best organizations in football. I mean, winning 2 Super Bowls and getting to a third, you don't do that unless you're a really good organization. So I thought that was interesting for Pickett to talk about what he learned from, an organization that, like you said, has had that kind of success, and what he can bring to Cleveland, a team that needs to turn things around. And you certainly can see from that why there's the appeal to the Browns that Kenny Pickett has.
So Kevin Stefanski talked about what he's learned about Kenny Pickett and also what he's seen from him.
I'm really excited about what Kenny brings to the team. He's a guy that works extremely hard at his craft. I love the way he thinks about the game. He's very, very tough. So he's doing a nice job. As you can imagine, with quarterbacks or any position, we're throwing a lot at these guys, and I think he's handling it really well. I think every player is, their career has different twists and turns to it. Certainly, I've seen that in my time, just with different players at every position, and you need the right people around you to have some success. So Kenny is a young football player. I mean, this is year 4 for him. He just won the Super Bowl last season watching, and playing, but certainly seeing how it's done at an extremely high level and in a different way, different system, those type of things, but still a young player that I think has a lot left to go in his career.
And again, Tim, I'm not saying he's going to be the starter, but there seems to be this perception that it's Flacco's job and to lose, and I don't see that. I think those two are going to be given equal opportunities to win the starting job.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like based on, all the reporting that's come out of Berea since the Browns took Shedeur Sanders, that is going to be as much of an open 4-man competition as you could possibly have. If they're breaking onto this passing camp style where they're going 2 guys together with a group of receivers, in 7-on-7 situations and passing drills, they're going to do everything in their power to certainly make this as even of a quarterback competition as you could possibly have. Now, that said, obviously Pickett and Flacco have an advantage naturally because they've played a lot of football. Joe Flacco's got a Super Bowl ring, and Kenny Pickett has had plenty of experience as a starting quarterback. So certainly by that fact alone, these 2 guys are going to have an edge. And I feel like because Kenny Pickett has been a safer quarterback in terms of not throwing a lot of interceptions, I could see the appeal of that to a Browns team that has turned the ball over a ton the last 2 seasons. And just by the ability to protect the football, Kenny Pickett obviously is not going to throw a lot of touchdowns, but he's also not going to necessarily put you in a bad position by turning the football over. That was something that was clearly emphasized in Pittsburgh, that they've been emphasizing for years on protecting the football. So you would have to imagine that's going to carry over to Cleveland, and you could see the appeal of that. Is it going to translate to success and points? We're going to have to see how that plays out, but certainly he's learned a lot. And of course, we all know what Joe Flacco did at the end of 2023 in Cleveland. So, I mean, it's hard not to look at those 2 guys based on just the fact that they've been there and done that as starters, former starters in the NFL, and say that, one of those 2, either of those 2 guys looks like a favorite right now as we continue through OTAs.
And to your point, you could argue that the defense, the defense is by far the strength of this team. So the quarterback play, one way to elevate the quarterback play, and there's a lot of ways to elevate the quarterback play we've seen, but one way is to not put the defense in a bad spot, which they did repeatedly last year.
Yeah, I feel like that's a fact about last season that gets lost a lot. People say, the defense took a step back and did not look good. Yeah, it didn't look good last year. It didn't look nearly as good as in 2023, but I've been saying this a ton over this last offseason. The biggest reason the Browns went 3-14 is because they arguably had the two worst quarterbacks in football starting the vast majority of their games with Deshaun Watson and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. When you make the mistakes those guys did with turnovers and not even getting first downs, the fact that they were so bad on third down. When you put a defense in a bad position, it doesn't matter how good a defense is. It could be the 85 Bears, the 2000 Ravens, any of the New England Patriots defenses in the early days of Tom Brady. It doesn't matter how good a defense is. They're going to wear down over the course of a game if they don't get rest, if they feel the pressure to not give up anything. That ultimately has a negative effect on a defense. So sometimes some people say sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and I think that has to apply in this situation. That no matter who's the quarterback for the Browns, you got to be able to put up some points, if nothing else, just to keep the defense from feeling like it has to keep teams somehow to single digits, which we know in today's NFL is almost impossible.
So veteran quarterback Joe Flacco talked about being part of this quarterback competition with the Browns.
Well, it's like when somebody asked the question, like, do you feel a certain way when they draft two quarterbacks or whatever? I think there's no shying away that there's something that gets ignited in you a little bit. Like, there's a reason I still want to play this game, But at the end of the day, I really don't focus on those things. I focus on coming out here, doing my work, having a lot of fun, and all those other things fall into place. Having good relationships with guys, and that's the quarterbacks included. It's not just the receivers and the O-line and the running backs. It's having good relationships in that quarterback room. You spend a lot of time with those guys. They all seem to be great guys and guys that want to play well and get better, and so I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, and the other thing that he made clear was, when he says he's not here to be a mentor, it doesn't mean he's not trying to help the younger quarterbacks, but it means he'll tell them what he sees, tell them how to work through it, and then it's up to them whether they listen to it or not.
Yeah, I think with Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, they'd be really smart to listen to Joe Flacco. I mean, all he has to do is show up the Super Bowl ring, and those guys can see that they can learn a lot from a guy like Joe Flacco. And what I think is interesting is he was him talking about building relationships in the quarterback room. Yeah, it's a four-man competition. Everybody's battling to start, but once they name that starter, those guys who are the backups gotta, help the starter in any way possible. So that's, I think, a big reason why he's talking about building relationships within that quarterback room, building that healthy kind of competition to where they're all pushing each other. They're all working as hard to be the best version of themselves. And usually in competitions, the cream rises to the top, and the cliches, cream rises to the top, competition makes everybody better. We'll see how it all plays out. But so far, as you would expect, the quarterbacks seem like they're all saying and doing the right things right now.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out to the other side of the break, talk a little bit about the running backs. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason and talk some receivers. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
At the Ohio Lottery, we make Keno fun your way. So go on, pick your wager. Will it be $1, $2, $10, or more? Your call. Then it's as easy as picking up to 10 numbers. Use any inspiration you like. You can even tag on the booster for a chance to boost your winnings up to 10 times. Every few minutes across Ohio, 20 out of 80 possible numbers are drawn. And if enough of yours match, you win. Keno is always fun your way.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer at cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, this is Jim from Southern Ohio, Cleveland fan since Bernie, and I think they ought to call our new running backs Quake and Shake. I think that would be a very good handle for them, too, and I think they're really going to be good. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails, Tim. I like it. Nobody's done it. It's not overused. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm old school in this. I'm not ready to give anybody nicknames till they go out there and, prove it on the NFL level. That's just my own opinion. I mean, I kind of like it a little bit. Thunder and lightning gets used way too much, and I personally would just keep that reserved for, Lendale White and Reggie Bush at USC back in the day. That is really, to me, the only thunder and lightning thing I could ever say. But what I think is interesting when you talk about the shaking Quay thing, I think is funny because we think of Quinshon Judkins as the power back and Dylan Sampson as the shifty of the two backs, but Judkins has a little bit more mobility, I think, as far as agility than you would think, and Sampson actually runs with a pretty good amount of power, despite being compact. But both these guys, certainly guys that we all could have seen, being potential second-round picks, and the Browns get both of them. So I think it's going to be fun to see these two guys, get to work and really see what the Browns can get out of both these guys, and if these two guys can really become a quality tandem going forward.
So this is from PFF 2025 running back rankings. Number 1, they have Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley is 2, Bijan Robinson 3. They have Najee Harris 26, Judkins from the Browns 27th, and then Travion Henderson, also his Ohio State teammate, Patriots 28th. Judkins will likely be RB1 in Cleveland. PFF rushing grades 88.2, 83.4, 88.8 in his 3 seasons of college football. You can argue the rate. It's tough to rank, particularly rookie running backs. If the Browns' running game is not top third in the league, they are going to struggle to win games next year, mightily.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, there's a reason they went on, got these two guys, that they drafted Harold Fannin Jr., that they signed 2 veteran offensive linemen in free agency, Cornelius Lucas and Tevin Jenkins, and that they went back to Kevin Stefanski's scheme and also bringing in a new offensive line coach. I mean, the running game was just so bad last season. It wasn't even just that they couldn't run the football. It's the times that they didn't try to run the football. And I think that, among many other things, was why, the scheme just looked so bad, and why I thought last season the offense as it was unfixable. So I think with the investment they've made, certainly it goes back to the biggest thing I said at the beginning of the offseason was, in addition to having some kind of plan for quarterback, you have to rebuild this run game. And certainly the Browns have done a lot of things to try and rebuild the run game, in a particular, just reloaded running back. Now it's up to these guys to get the work in over the next couple of months and go out and perform. And when you talk about these rankings, yeah, it's hard to see where these guys are going to be, until they step on the field. Again, old school, and these guys can't go out and prove themselves until September, when the games count and mean something. So, it's just going to be interesting to see how it kind of plays out, over these next couple of months as these guys get reps and they get up to speed, and to see what this 1-2 combination of Judkins and Sampson is going to look like. And
we won't know right now, even the OTAs, and they're not in pads, they're not hitting. They're not, but I will say, Judkins is a big guy who moves his feet well. That I can see.
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing that for 3 years of college. 2 at Ole Miss, 1 at Ohio State. So, I mean, especially people up here in Ohio, they've seen plenty in Quinshon Judkins. They know certainly what to expect out of them. It would have been fun as well, if when Tennessee came to Columbus, in the playoff against Ohio State, we got to see Dylan Sampson. Unfortunately, he was not 100%, and he didn't get to be out there. That probably wouldn't have turned the game too much, but it's kind of interesting that the last time the last game Ohio State played in the shoe last season, both 2 future Browns running backs were on the field together. So it's kind of interesting how that kind of plays out. Now they get to be teammates, and it'll be fun.
So in addition to the running game, another guy that's going to be hugely important, and he's really looking to take another step forward, Jerry Jeudy. He will be relied upon heavily in the Browns' passing game. Kevin Stefanski talked about Jeudy.
I think Jerry is still a young player. I think Jerry has room to grow. I think he would tell you that. There's techniques that he's working on. It was year 1 for us with him, so getting a feel for the route concepts that he's really good at, things that he can improve upon. But with year 2, with a team, you're constantly thinking about that next step, and that can come in a variety of ways. Certainly usage and where we put him and how we use him and what position he's playing and when you're motioning him, when you're doing different things. I think those are all the types of things that can grow into year 2.
And quite frankly, with what's behind him, it's unproven. So Jerry Jeudy, they're counting on him to take another step forward.
Yeah, he definitely has to. I think what fans should be happy about with Jerry Jeudy, one they should be eager about. You look at the numbers he put up last season: 90 catches, 1,229 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did it with, like I said, an offense that featured arguably the 2 worst quarterbacks in football for the majority of the season. And he still had Pro Bowl numbers worthy of a Pro Bowl selection, which, of course, he got last season. Still only 26 years old, just turned 26 at the end of April. So you're looking at a guy in Jerry Jeudy who, like Kevin Stefanski said, the arrow seems like it could still go up for Jeudy for a couple more seasons. Now that if you assume that the quarterback play is obviously going to be much improved going into 2025 into more of Kevin Stefanski's normal scheme, you have to imagine Jerry Jeudy should be just as productive, if not more productive, and being able to get a few more touchdowns there. Just his presence and the way he played last season, given the many problems the Browns had on the offense, no reason to think he can't be better this season with what we know is a much more proven scheme.
And again, it's 7-on-7. It's no pads, but every time you looked around, Jerry Jeudy was catching the ball from a different quarterback in the first couple of days of OTAs.
Yeah, I mean, he's used to it. I mean, he caught, catching balls from Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, DTR, despite, the turmoil they had at the position last year, he was still really productive, like I said. So, like I said, it's going to, like you said, it's going to be up to the other guys behind him to step up, but certainly he's capable. He showed last year he's capable of doing his part and leading a receiver group.
So Nathan Zgura, color analyst on the Browns radio network, also host of Browns Daily, talking about how the Browns could very well use Harold Fannin.
You're going to see a lot of Njoku and Fannin on the field together. For me, the battle to watch is, here's the other thing to think about. Fannin could really kind of be your third receiver.
Yeah.
He could be a big slot for you. So
for sure.
If how this all comes together, to me, he is very important to what this offense can truly be, and he could actually help alleviate some of the things that are wrong right now in the receiver room if he can be very, very good.
Yeah, it's intriguing because he does have a skill set of a big wide receiver. Imagine Tillman and him and Njoku, and you split him or Njoku wide.
I mean, that makes it for a pretty darn tough trio in the red zone to deal with, no question about it. And Kevin Stefanski, we've seen in the past, can be creative in red zone situations. So with Harold Fannin, I think we all kind of knew with Kevin Stefanski kind of taking more control of the offense that they were eventually going to get a second tight end out there. And I think right now with where Fannin is as a player, coming into the NFL, certainly needs to get bigger and stronger. So at least in the interim, like, Nathan was suggesting, yeah, you can get him into those situations where he can kind of be a hybrid slot receiver / tight end, and you can create some matchups with it because in theory, he should be able to win well against slot corners because he's just bigger and stronger than those guys. And then, as those kind of tight ends we talked about people talked about so many times, there are guys that are just too fast for linebackers sometimes, even though the linebacker position has certainly gotten faster over the last handful of years with the tight end playing a role. Yeah, I don't think he's going to have as productive a rookie season as Sam Laporta did with the Lions or Brock Bowers did with the Raiders. But Browns don't need him to do that. They just need him to go out there and be productive. And for a guy who's got, had 100+ catches last season at Bowling Green, despite being far and away their most important player, and the guy that I guarantee every defense that they went up against spent so much time trying to scheme against, and he was still productive, you would have to think he's going to find a place in the NFL with the Browns to have some productivity right away, especially as a receiver.
Yeah, and he did it against elite competition when Bowling Green played. Wasn't only against MAC, did it against Texas A&M, Penn State. So he did play up, if you will.
That's a big thing. I mean, he showed he could play against, those elite 4- and 5-star recruits that, those two programs had. I mean, Penn State's went to the national semifinal last season, and Texas A&M, while not great last year, was still pretty solid. So, I mean, that says a lot for a guy who plays in a MAC school to go up on the road to those two places and still play at an extremely high level. I think that speaks a lot about the kind of talent that Harold Fannin Jr. has, and he's certainly bringing with him to the Browns.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit more about some rookies. Sports4CLE, will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Try C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
How you guys doing? I want to make a bold prediction for the Cleveland Browns rookie class. I believe Shedeur Sanders, I do believe he will have the best quarterback season out of all the rookie QBs this year. One, he has all the intangibles to play quarterback at a high level. Accuracy, pocket presence, he got the footwork, he has the experience of playing behind lesser offensive line. You know, he's more NFL ready. He's going to a team that has recent success, has some pieces. There's only one motivational factor that Shedeur needs, and he got it. He was picked 144, and he got 143 names to look at for the rest of his career. So I think he's going to finish as the best quarterback in the rookie class, at least as it pertains to their rookie season. Bet that. Y'all have a nice day. Let's go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. So let's take a look at this, Tim, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. This is from PFF, ranking the 2025 rookie quarterbacks by best situations. They go Jackson Dart of the Giants. Obviously, he has Malik Neighbors. Tyler Shuck of the Saints. I guess Kamara and Olave is what they're thinking there. Cam Ward of the Titans. That one, okay. Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders of the Browns. Browns spent third-round pick on Gabriel after he posted an 86.3 passer rating. Sanders, one of the top QBs on the PFF big board, slid nearly 100 spots from his ranking. Whichever rookie wins the job takes over that offense. Finished in the bottom 10 of every major grading category last season. All fair. I wouldn't be surprised if Sanders is the best rookie quarterback, and I wouldn't be surprised if he isn't. I don't know what to expect from either of the Browns rookies. I think Cam Ward was I think people fell in love with it during the draft process. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think what this kind of reinforces, that ranking is that, none of these four teams needing quarterbacks, are exactly great situations. But in some ways, those are why those teams are taking quarterbacks, because they need those guys. And for whatever reason, their situation isn't right. And, looking at the reasoning from PFF about the Browns, yeah, they finished bottom 10 in every category. And I think the issues that felt like that held them back last year, at least on paper, they look, much improved. I think the biggest concern I have is, the depth of the offensive line, and, they didn't draft an offensive lineman in 2025. Certainly that's something you can look at going forward if you need to make more upgrades at the position. Receiver's still a question, but they've revamped the running game entirely. They went back to a scheme that Kevin Stefanski's run in the past that we know has had success. I've talked about it earlier on the show today. And when it comes to Shedeur in particular, I don't think anybody should be shocked if he's starting at some point this season. I don't know if it's going to be week 1. I think he would have to, just dominate Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. He would have to be leaps and bounds better than those two guys and have a Russell Wilson-esque, rookie camp and preseason to earn the starting job in week 1. So, and I mean, it's just hard to do for any rookie coming in the NFL. We don't know how these guys are going to look till they get out there, till they get into the NFL grind, and then they see what it's like to go up against NFL players. We don't know, but what we do know is it seems like Shedeur has really done and said all the right things, that he's come to Cleveland, ready to work. Seems like he's going out of his way to be a really good teammate and really working hard. So from that perspective, it seems like he's doing all the things he needs to do to really play a factor in this quarterback competition. And it's just up to these guys and how they perform in practice and in the preseason to see who goes out and gets that starting job in September. But certainly I would not count out Shedeur, just because like I've said so many times in the pre-draft process, I thought he was a guy who did more with less than every other quarterback in that draft class.
Yeah, and again, he's starting from behind. Obviously, I would say he and Gabriel are both starting behind Pickett and Flacco. That's just kind of the way it is. So there's some room to make up. There's plenty of time. I would be surprised if either rookie on the Browns started week 1. but we'll see. There's surprises that happen all the time. A guy that knows a little bit about quarterback play, Drew Bledsoe, former NFL quarterback, talking about what he sees with Shedeur Sanders. This from The Herd with Colin Cowherd.
When I watch him, he's accurate. He throws with anticipation. There's a quarterback thing that I always look for if I'm watching quarterbacks. The ones that are successful, you can almost see the future, right? You have to be able to anticipate. You have to throw guys open. If you wait to see a guy open, especially as you rise to the NFL level, then you're behind and you're just not going to be successful. And I've watched that happen with some quarterbacks that had really big arm talent, but they had to wait to see somebody open before they throw the ball. Shedeur seems to be able to anticipate well. I liked watching him play in college. Again, he didn't have a ton, of help up front. He was getting hit. It's another thing that I look for. I'm always kind of suspicious when you see some of these, not always, but some of these quarterbacks that come out of the great programs, the Ohio States and Alabamas of the world, because, they're out there. Their guys are better than the other guys. They're not getting hit. They're throwing to open guys. Most guys should be able to do that. But when you watch a guy that's getting hit repeatedly and still popping up and making the plays for you, that's something that is a quality that's hard to learn if you can learn it. And he got his ass knocked off in college and still continued to battle and play well. So, I believe he's going to have some success, at some point, whether it's this year, next year, whenever that happens.
And again, you always want to hear a guy that's played the position at a high level and what he sees in a potential rookie. And those are things that if you tell me he can throw people open and can take hits, those are two hugely important qualities for an NFL quarterback. We got to see it, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the thing with all these guys. We got to see how it plays out, with OTAs, mandatory minicamp, training camp, preseason, all those sorts of things. But what Drew Bledsoe, I think, was definitely talking about are two things that really stand out in the NFL is, how tough you are, how physically and mentally tough you are, because quarterbacks are going to take hits. They're going to get injured at some point. It's just the nature of the game. No offensive line is going to protect a quarterback for long enough to, have a quarterback just stand there all day and make a throw. So I think with Shedeur, with any quarterback, you're kind of looking for what I think Drew Bledsoe was talking about is separators. How can you see something that, opens up that in a defense where you're throwing a guy open into a space where they're not necessarily anticipating a ball going. If you can be just one step ahead of a defense at any given time, I think that's where, as a quarterback, you really have a chance to be successful. And Drew Bledsoe, obviously, he's a guy who's done it before. He's the former number one overall pick, took his Patriots team to a Super Bowl, and he's certainly had plenty of success in the NFL. So certainly you trust those guys who have had that kind of success to see something in a guy like Shedeur. And that's a pretty good endorsement in Shedeur's corner. So like I've talked so much in the draft cycle just about the intangibles with Shedeur that maybe there wasn't that sexiness to his game that Cam Ward certainly had. But I think it was those things you couldn't necessarily quantify when you watch him that I think made him a prospect that I think, should not have been taken nearly as late as he was. Certainly he should have the worst been, I think, a top 50 prospect.
All right, before I let you go, this is from ESPN. And based on their Football Power Index, its projected draft order for next season. They project the Browns have a 13% chance at getting the number one overall pick, 46% being in the top five. Giants, number two at 12%, 43%. Titans, 11% at 4%. Do we see a recurring theme? Those are the three that picked first this year. Saints, 10%, 39%, top five. Jets, 10%, so the Jets are the top five, 40%. They have the Jaguars, 9th, and a 19% at getting a top five. Remember, the Browns have the Jaguars pick in the first overall pick from that trade going back from 2 to 5. So, again, you can't argue with it because they are going to be relying on so many rookies to perform. I think that's the other thing that I would say relative to the Browns.
Yeah, I would feel like those metrics really analyze, proven quantities. And the Browns really this year are not going to have a lot of that. Two of the quarterbacks they drafted are rookies. arguably two of their top 3 running backs they drafted have never taken an NFL snap and won't until September. And we just don't know what this scheme is going to look like, how all these pieces are going to fit together, in a game again until September. So there's so many unknowns. So you could see why maybe an advanced number like this is kind of hedging on them as far as, looking ahead to the future. And then looking in the rest of the rankings, the Giants there, I do think they're going to be better just because you have 2 veteran quarterbacks in Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. I know neither one was great last season, but they're certainly steady enough to give them time for Jackson Dart to develop. And I feel like the other thing with the Saints being up as high as they were, I do think, honestly, with what happened with Derek Carr, they might have the worst quarterback situation in football, because I was not a big fan of Spencer Rattler when he got drafted, and I don't know if Jake Haener really is going to amount to much in the NFL. So that really puts a lot of pressure on Tyler Shough to be the X factor. And yes, the Saints are arguably in the worst division in football in the NFC South, so that certainly makes their road a lot easier. But it's tough for any rookie quarterback. Any rookie quarterback coming in is going to have those issues, especially early in the season. Even Jaden Daniels had his struggles in his first or second game before he really took off. I believe it was on Monday Nighter in Cincinnati when he really just erupted and showed everybody that, yeah, he was a really special quarterback. So, again, not a lot. It comes down to proven commodities. Browns just don't have a lot of those, and it's up to those guys to kind of live up to those draft statuses and really show that, the Browns made the right decision, especially when it comes to those 2 quarterbacks that they drafted.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time, the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Tim Bielik. Make sure you check him out, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
At the Ohio Lottery, we make Keno fun your way. So go on, pick your wager. Will it be $1, $2, 10, or more? Your call. Then it's as easy as picking up to 10 numbers. Use any inspiration you like. You can even tag on the booster for a chance to boost your winnings up to 10 times. Every few minutes across Ohio, 20 out of 80 possible numbers are drawn. And if enough of yours match, you win. Keno is always fun your way.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. OTAs continue to go on out in Berea, and we've gotten a look at some of the veterans, some of the rookies. Mason Graham, who signed his contract yesterday, doing some bag and agility work. Let's welcome in Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Jake, it's kind of interesting, and we'll look at some of the video of some of the guys here as we talk about it, but 7-on-7, 7-on-9s, 11-on-11s, shells, not really any pads, so it's tough to get really excited about what you see, but it is everybody on the team together.
Yeah, except for, I think there's some select veterans. Miles is
right
doing some, some trips. Listen, there's seasoned veteran guys who've been around the league long enough that you if they're not fighting for a job, it's okay for them to keep the batteries fresh, right? I think you'll get varying opinions on that, but I certainly don't have an issue with it so much as like, hey, Miles, man, line up at the 9 technique here and get after the quarterback or take on a pulling guard. I think he can handle those jobs. Almost 30 years old now, but yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's a good chance for them to get together. I'm especially like, where I'm at with it, and this might differ from some other people, but where I'm at with it is I'm most concerned about the offense coming together. Quarterback timing, catching the football from left-handed young quarterback. You know what I'm saying? There's a little bit of variation there. They're putting in new wrinkles that I think are going to relate a little more to what Kevin's done in the past with some of those guys who are here now, especially the running backs, some of the quarterbacks. And, Jerry Jeudy wasn't here for that last year of Kevin really anchoring play calling and design. So there's a lot of new stuff they're getting down. So I especially like that most of the offense is intact in place and in working together, because I think there's so much that needs to happen there for them to get into the best place possible to, just be a conducive group. Like we think about last year, we saw so many mistakes on illegal motions and different things that were just minor setup issues that were so often plaguing them. So I want them to get as many reps for the mental side of it. I know that we had talked off air a little bit about, the lack of pads, and somehow, the NFL has worked in such reverse from that idea that they used to have. And I get it. The season's longer than it's ever been. The athletes are stronger. The injuries can certainly, accumulate. But where I'm at with it is, if that's the case, which is whatever, that's fine. It's so important to get the mental stuff down here, the timing stuff down here. So when the pads go on, when you have to think less and react more, you don't have to think, right? You know where you're supposed to go, you know where you're supposed to be, and you know where you're supposed to be and on time and all of that stuff. So I think this is obviously not the most important part of the offseason, but I do think it still carries a real segment of importance for so many guys on the offensive side of the ball. Now, Jim Schwartz defense, most of the people in the organization are returning on that side of the football. You do have some additions, like we said, a couple really important additions there with Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger. We'll see how those guys handle it, but it seems like they're both really smart players, and I think they should adapt pretty well. I don't think this defense is the most tricky to pick up in terms of some defenses have a lot of checks, a lot of zone match, a lot of pattern matching, and you're passing off routes and some of that really tricky stuff for a linebacker, but there's not as much of that. They like to play, like we said, very regimented zone coverages. I've talked about over the years with you guys here with Jim Schwartz approach, and then a lot of man coverage, which is very defined. So it's just cleaning up technique more so than, hey, we need to communicate and pass off this route combo or do something that involves a bit more intricate next level thinking. So you feel good about that. And then for Mason, it's just going through the reps, knowing what they want him to do. It's a different approach to defensive line than what Michigan had, where they're going to ask him to be a bit more vertical upfield, just, pursue upfield, shoot gaps, disrupt, instead of maybe maintain, hold down a run fit or hold down two bodies so that we can keep a linebacker free. That's a huge difference in the approach that Jim takes to defense, which is like, hey, man, I want my defensive ends wrecking havoc upfield. You're playing the run on the way to the quarterback, and we'll have the linebackers, as Jason Tarver talks about all the time, clean it up. So I'm not so worried about defense. I think that they are at the baseline and average group and should be fine. And then to me, it's just about, if you want to know whether the Browns win some ball games this year, it's what kind of performance do they get out of this offense as compared to the last two seasons of struggles.
I know you wrote an article for BrownsFilmBreakdown.com, 5 veterans that need strong off seasons. Take us through that article and who you were thinking.
Yeah, so I tried to talk through this with listeners as best I could about guys that just really need sort of to establish themselves to extend their relationship, right? So they're on rookie contracts or the end of a second contract and really need to have a strong offseason to put themselves in the best place, and then obviously a strong season to extend the relationship with. So at the top is DeJuan Jones. I think it feels like he gets the first crack at left tackle. You have heard some rumblings about him losing some weight. We'll see what that ultimately looks like. I think he's 6'8", 400 last year at times. I think he's got to be more 6'8", 350 or just south of that to ease the burden on those knees and ankles, which have cost him 2 seasons. Cut short. So if he wants to play 17 ball games, he wants to get paid like a real NFL tackle, a second contract, he's got an opportunity here. It feels like he gets the first crack at left tackle. We'll see what they do rotationally. Most of his NFL starts have been on the right side, which is what he did mostly at Ohio State, but it feels like they would rather have Conklin play the right side, let him get a crack at the left side, which he did a couple games, before the injury in New Orleans. He got a chance to play on the left side. It was very uneven, but it's a real adjustment. But they think he's got a little bit has high school experience, and then his first few starts at Ohio State and his younger portions of his career were the left side. So it's not totally foreign to him, but he needs to be healthy. He needs to be able to move, and it's a wildly important season for him. Third year. If you have a great third year on your 4-year rookie contract, you got a chance to sign an extension going into year 4. That's what you want. You don't love to leave things up in the air going into your 4th year. Could always start the year strong and then have maybe a mid-season extension. The Browns haven't been afraid to do that, but boy, would it help the longevity of where this offensive line is going, because we know between left guard to right tackle, it's a bunch of veterans who are either Joel is retiring after another year. You got Conklin's contract up. You got Posick, who's going to be in the contract popped off scenario where he's going to be done with his deal. And then Wyatt Teller also going to be at the end of his deal. Those guys have all been paid pretty handsomely by the organization. We'll see if they can get some of that hunger back and play better this year. But getting DeJuan to kind of anchor the left side would be a really good answer in a year they did not draft a tackle because it didn't really fall in their lap to take one. So DeJuan is the first one. Martin Emerson, 2 pretty strong years. I mean, let me put it this way. I thought his first year, his rookie year, was his best year because it was pre-Jim Schwartz era, which was more of the Joe Woods zone-based system. And since they've gone to a man system with Martin, it's been uneven. His first year was better. Last year, as we know, was a major regression. They like him. They like his attitude. They like his physical nature. They like his body type. But the quickness and the twitch stuff, that makes you need, the elements you need to be a really good man corner are uneven, and it got picked on last year, and I'm worried about it. So he needs a strong offseason. I know this sounds silly, but he switched to the number 1, which is a strong indication of like they're a respected veteran. And because Kevin doesn't give away single-digit numbers to players that are not established in the organization, but they need him to be better, especially as they made that decision to move Greg Newsome, who was a first-round pick, off of playing outside after his rookie year and inside. And it would be a real bummer to lose both young players because they're not performing in your defense after the season, because you just can't get enough out of them. So that would be, ideally at one of those two. It's an important year for Greg Newsome, but I really do lean Emerson because outside corners and his body type are so rare that it would just solve so much of their future if he had a second contract as a part of the defense. Mahmoud Diabate is the next one. I'll kind of breeze through these quickly. Played a lot last year because Jordan Hicks dealt with injuries off and on, especially with his arm bicep injury. And then he played when JOK lost to the season after week 8 there. We know they invested in Carson Schlesinger. We know Jordan Hicks is back, and they brought some veterans back around them. They also drafted a young guy the year before. He played a lot. He played relatively well early in the season, but the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks was really rough. Now, he's a guy who was a UDFA. He transferred from more of a edge linebacker, more of a stand-up edge rusher to a off-ball linebacker between college and the NFL. There's been some really good. There's also been some really uneven stuff going on too. So does he find a role? He's got to compete for it all offseason with Schlesinger, with Hicks, with the other veterans at that position group. We'll see. It would be nice. He's an athletic young man. He's obviously a really good person from everything you hear. So I would really like him to figure out, like, if he could be the running mate next to Schlesinger for the foreseeable future because he starts to really solidify himself, that would help ease some of that linebacker burden. We'll see what happens with JOK. That's kind of a domino, a wild card hanging out there for the future. We know you don't get him this year, but the book doesn't seem to be closed. So that's one worth paying attention to. Cedric Tillman, the Browns didn't really draft, as we know, or really invest in a wide receiver this offseason. They did bring in Deontay Johnson, but after the draft, they didn't draft anybody. So it's Tillman and it's Jeudy. And then we're going to play some Harold Fannin, and we're going to play some, Johnson a little bit here and there. We got Jamari Thrash in another year. Second year in the league. The pressure's on Tillman. Can he be the guy who he was for 3 weeks when they lost Amari Cooper to that trade? He had a lot of targets. He had a lot of production. He looked like he could play inside, outside, more outside than inside, and be an effective outside receiver, leveraging the sideline, but also an ability to hit in-breaking routes and catch difficult throws. He had obviously the huge catch against the Ravens for the win. And I think there's something there. I think they believe in him going into year 3, but like I'm saying, there's a kind of a common theme here. Year 3 needs to be good for him going into year 4, where you're at the end of your rookie deal and it sort of gets a little uneven. So Tillman is one that I am paying very close attention to, obviously working off of Jerry Jeudy. And then I still think Deontay Johnson, if the attitude is right, is a pretty decent route runner and separator who could have some opportunity here if Cedric can't stay healthy, which has been a problem his first 2 years. We know he's lost last 6 weeks of last year because of concussions, and that's, hey, I get it. That's dicey. It's tough, but it ultimately is that best ability is availability. So we will see what shakes out there. And then the last one for me, kind of looking at my list here, is probably one not many people think of, but David Njoku's in the final year of his contract, and they drafted Harold Fannin, who is a pass weapon that I think they're going to deploy with him. But does that mean that Harold Fannin is taking over that room because the contract with David doesn't get worked out, or they feel like they want to go cheap? They're going to have to go cheap somewhere at some point, and maybe they feel like they can use some different blocking types around Fannin. Maybe I believe he's an adequate blocker, but he's not David. He's not that big of an athlete. I mean, David is a specimen, but ultimately David's approaching 30. He needs another contract, which is going to be a bit on the higher side again. I don't know if it'll be as lucrative as his second contract, but look at his 23 season when he finally had a nice year, up over 900 yards. He had 130 targets and upward of 90 catches, but every other year has been, sort of that 500-yard range throughout his career, and they can't pay giant money for that continually if the blocking's not as good. So you got to think last year hurt at the early portion of the season, and then didn't block as well as he has in his career, and the pass game production took a dip back to a little bit more of who he's been. So I think David needs a really strong offseason. I think he needs to have a really strong year north of 800 yards. And that's where you start to see maybe a midseason third contract for him, which would be awesome. You love your guys getting third contracts. That's kind of lingering for the likes of him and Grant Delpit and, Denzel Ward, those guys that you want to be, third contract players are where your team turns into a culture of this is who we are. When you get 4 or 5, 6 guys on those third deals, you develop them, you keep them. And since they're not paying a quarterback beyond the next 2 years, Watson will fall off there. And at some point, they do have a way of leveraging a little bit of that money and kind of trying to push things off in the future. But you got to prove that you're worth that investment for a third contract. And that's where I think David, with having that direct draft right behind him with a player like Harold Fannin, a pick 67 is a serious pick. You got to see how that shakes out and what kind of usage they want to have for Fannin. So I think it's a big year for David.
Jake Burns, as always, great stuff. Tell folks how they can find you, brownsfilmbreakdown.com, and what exactly it is.
Yeah, so we have a website, a Substack that we run that is exclusively thought on passionate Browns fans yearning for deep conversation, film analysis, and a community of people who are trying to be well-educated on this football team. So that's what we aim for. There's a really nice app that can get everything delivered to your phone. It's a daily podcast. It's newsletters. It's film rooms. It's very intuitive, I think very interactive, and obviously we're trying to do things that nobody else in the market is doing with teaching you the deep details of the Browns, X's and O's, thoughts around the roster building, thoughts around cap spending, all of that stuff, and a different approach. So, yeah, brownsfilmbreakdown.com, and then obviously the Substack app for your smartphone is where you can find us.
Great stuff as always, Jake Burns. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Jake Burns, make sure you check him out. brownsfilmbreakdown.com. Really good stuff. The film breakdowns are awesome. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.